Gives me wonderful, great, fabulous pleasure to introduce our speakers tonight because I've been knowing them for a long time. Rufus and Jan were instrumental in putting Tom and I to work in our retirement. We found out that retirement means you never get a day off. So Rufus, I don't know if you know, is one of the founders of the Naturalist program, and he's retired now too, but I think he's finding that he doesn't get a day off. He works with he was with Texas Parks and Wildlife. I want to be sure I get this right. District leader for the 25 county Edwards Plateau. He's a certified wildlife biologist, 30 years of professional experience, and he is just an all-around nice guy. I love tromping the prairie with him. We beat the prairie and we flush the birds and we have a good time out in the field. So anything you do with Rufus, you'll enjoy it. Jan, she's also guilty. She encouraged, we were two budding birders, and she said, "Oh yeah, you know enough, you can go and teach a class." She was the education director at Civil and Nature Center, and we were just so dumb, we just believed her. And we found that the more you study to teach, the more you learn. In fact, they say to teach is to learn twice. I think it's 3 times or 4 times. So we're very grateful to Jan for getting us into some of the things that we still do today. But she is co-author. She's an author on her own of The Trees, Shrubs, and Vines of Texas Hill Country. And it's a wonderful book. It's a great reference. If you don't have it, she's got some for sale back there. And Rufus and Jan are co-authors of this book up here, and that book back there that they're selling is it's a Myrna and David K. Langford book of Working Land series from Texas A&M University, College Station. And this is an update. They have already had this book once with a different cover. It has been so useful and so practical that it is got legs, it's got staying power, and they were asked to update it and expand it. So they have. So we know that birds are declining, and what they're trying to do is get landowners educated of how they can, no matter how much land or how little bit of land you have, what you can do on your property to make it more attractive, to make it more sustainable for birds. And they've added some new things, and they've expanded some other things. And if you don't have this book and you have land, even if it's a little pot plant in your back patio, you can learn something from it. And I highly recommend it. So Jan, you're going to come up and speak first, and then Rufus will take it from there. So we'll go ahead. Fernando, if you would put up the other slides. Oh, that is the other slides. Isn't it? No, that's it. Not yet.
Do we know how many people are on Zoom?
There are 53 people online.
54.
54.
Welcome, everyone. On Zoom.
Yeah.
And both of us are very happy to be here to talk to you tonight. To start with, and Fernando, I'm not quite sure how to do this with the Zoom folks, but
I need to hold your mic up so we can hear you again.
Oh, yes, yes, ma'am.
4 fingers, remember?
Okay.
How you drink your scotch?
Is this working better now? You can hear me? Yeah, I don't have to show. I'm going to ask some questions that will help us with our presentation. And so it's a show of hands. Rufus, you're going to have me count. Patrick?
Yeah, I'll count.
How many, raise your hand if you are take care of less than an acre. Thank you. How about 1 to 20 acres? 1 to 20. Okay, good.
Okay.
A couple, but lots of small ones. How about over 20 acres? Okay, couple.
30.
Yeah. Good. How many of you actually work on land, take care of land outside of Bear County?
1, 2, 3,
Oh,
4, 5,
interesting.
5, 6.
Where about? Can you tell me where about?
Padre Island,
Padre Island.
Menard County, and Kendall County.
Anybody else want to say?
Bandera,
Bandera.
Brewster County, and Kendall County, and Medina County.
Ooh, Okay, good. Got it. And how many of you have a wildlife tax valuation on your property? 2. Good, good. How many of you, 2? Okay, how many of you manage your property, no matter how small it is for birds?
Come on, everybody.
Okay, great. So that's very helpful. Now we know who we're talking to. So, I'm going to start though by talking about a little bit about the history of this book, because it has an unusual history. We never set out to write a book. Rufus and I have worked together for many years, 25, 30 years, you don't want to hear how long. And for many years, we taught an annual, very thorough wildlife tax valuation workshop. I mean, very thorough, 4 sessions. We had many, many people. Every single time that workshop ended, we had people coming up and wanting more information. Where could they go to get more information? And there was no place, there is no place, there was no book. The information that is in our book was research from many, 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 many different sources. Our bibliography, Patsy is responsible. Patsy is almost single-handedly responsible for the bibliography in our book. It is 20 pages long and has 20 entries on each page, so you know how much work she did, how much research that Rufus did primarily. And so we talked about that. After hearing that a couple of years, we decided, okay, maybe we should write a pamphlet. And because we knew how to write pamphlets. And lo and behold, after 8, 10 years, we had a 500-page resource book. So that pamphlet that we started out with morphed into this. Actually, it morphed into the first edition. And we had a little bit of a and we went, well, actually, I think it was that the press came to us. They were interested in what we were doing. And, but we had a little conflict with them. We feel as if they misnamed the first book. They called it Attracting Birds. Sounds like we were writing about bird feeders or something. But land stewardship really is the heart of what we are here to talk about today and what the book is involved with. And in a way, I really like listening to the reports that you gave, because our book really serves what you do, because this work, if we can get you folks to join up, we will all be increasing the number of birds you're seeing on all of those outings, because that's what this is about. When you improve bird habitat, you have more birds. Now, how do I get it to go on? Maybe I can just ask you. Maybe the top one?
I can change it. Well, I thought I could.
What I want to talk about now is our goal for this presentation today.
There we go.
Okay, so our goal, we have 2 goals. Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. Please keep reminding me because I'm terrible. Okay, so the first thing we'd like to do is to have you walk out of this room being able to recognize a healthy and an unhealthy. Because healthy habitat supports birds, unhealthy habitat does not. And we're going to focus on 2 habitats. These are, typical of the hill country and surrounding areas, grassland and live oak savanna are the habitats we're focusing on. The second thing is that we want to inspire you to join up, get active, be like us, find your passion to actually be working on the land that you have, or the people that you work with. I think some of you work with folks that have property. Okay, so I have a couple of reminders. These are sort of basic stuff. Okay, next one. This is something that we all know. And this is kind of why we chose birds when we were teaching wildlife tax evaluation techniques. Is that everyone loves birds. I mean, we all know that. And this is a quote from David Attenborough. No creature is more accessible and more desirable in a way. And the second reminder is even more important, and that is biodiversity. Because biodiversity is strength. Biodiversity is what makes a habitat, what makes a place resilient to change. Drought, it makes it resilient to all the stresses. The more plants you have in a plant community, the more resistant that plant community is to loss, to being lost. And it's on all, and this is something that we may not think about. Biodiversity actually operates on many different scales, from the tiny little individual organisms that are maybe flying into your house now, like the crane flies, right? To populations that are outdoors, the cedar waxwings that are flying around right now, or whole ecosystems, whole large areas that you drive or walk through. And fortunately for us, is every single one level, every single scale is important, is significant even. And so no matter how small your action is, you probably would like to do a whole lot more than you do for birds. But if you just do small things, it's important. And it's important to remember that so that we stay enthusiastic about what we're doing. Okay, so land stewardship for birds basically is enhancing habitat, because habitat is where the birds find their well, cover, it says here, but food, water, shelter, and space, and a place to breed and raise their young. It's the world, and different species have different requirements. Okay. I think now I'm gonna hand it over to you. So Rufus is gonna take over. He's gonna talk now about, he's gonna tell you what he's gonna talk about.
Actually,
Oh, wait a minute, I didn't do one thing.
oh. Go
Let
ahead.
me just skip that.
I don't think I need the microphone. So, and if you do, if there are any problems, let me know, raise your hand, I will take care of it. So what I'm going to talk about is land stewardship for birds, and so we're going to do an overview of what stewardship is, what land stewardship is. We're going to talk about how birds are indicators, good indicators for stewardship. We're going to give you some examples, a couple of examples of bird habitats and bird requirements. That linkage there is really important. And then we're going to talk about, I'm going to get enough time to go over land stewardship techniques. And to give you a primer of what we're going to do is we're going to select one of these techniques. I'm going to ask y'all what you want to cover. We're going to cover one of these techniques at the end, but we're going to start by talking about, and so this is, think about this. So think about this, so you got time. So what is land stewardship? Basically, land stewardship is the careful and responsible management of land entrusted to one's care. And private landowners have a tremendous responsibility and opportunity to make a difference for birds and for the relationship with birds and their habitat. One of the things that y'all are probably all aware of, but why land stewardship is critical is that, and over the past 50 years, this is related to a paper that came out in Science in 2019, and basically it was I'll back a little bit. one of the things that we found out when we were writing the book, it was obviously before this paper, the first edition, and we realized we were selecting birds to focus on in the book. And we realized that those birds many of those birds were considered priority birds or species in need of conservation. There are different terms that different agencies and organizations use, but basically that they were declining. And when we looked at things like breeding bird surveys, we were seeing these huge declines. These actually, this group of authors, a big chunk of it, of the data came from breeding bird surveys. Anybody that's participated in a breeding bird survey?
Yeah.
When I was in Western Kansas, I did a block out in Western Kansas. So breeding bird surveys are really important in being able to understand the trends, the population trends. Well, we've had a 29% decline in abundance. That's 3 billion birds that have been lost since the 1970s. And here is actually a table from that article, and I apologize, it is kind of small. But one of the things you can see is on the left are all the biomes and the birds associated with those biomes that have declined. And grassland birds are probably some of the most at-risk group of birds, but all these biomes, and including things like habitat generalists have declined significantly, which is very concerning. But there's one thing that's different, and that was wetlands. And so why would wetlands have increased, those birds that use wetlands, since the 1970s? Anybody have a?
Duck hunters.
Duck hunters. Actually, that's exactly right. Ducks Unlimited, duck hunters were concerned in the 60s about the declining duck populations. They organized, created Ducks Unlimited. There was a lot of emphasis on that. They got with agencies and organizations, and one of the things they came up with, the organizations came up with, and the agencies, was a plan. It was called the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. And they provided federal funding and went out, and actually when I was working in Western Kansas, we were actually going out and talking to landowners about protecting playa lakes. But a big part was in the prairie pothole country. And the reason I mention that is what I've been talking about is a little depressing. Well, that is a really important example that if we decide to put our mind to it, we can turn it around. That's a great example. An individual, and that's a group, whole group of birds, right? But another example are bluebirds. Bluebirds had declined significantly in the 60s. Bluebird trails became really popular. People putting up bluebird boxes. They've rebounded famously. Right? That's one species. We've got lots of species here. But the point is that there's some good news there. We can turn this around. Just to talk about some of our local species, kind of our local very charismatic bird would be the painted bunny. And if you look at this is from breeding bird survey data right there. And if you look at that data, you'll see that it's a Texas bird. Of course, Oklahoma as well, but that's Oklahoma. And so, but it actually goes down into Mexico. But think of it as a Texas bird. It really is a Texas bird and a beautiful bird. How many people have seen painted bunnies? Great bird. Here is the breeding bird survey data for the state of Texas. That's not a good trend. That's actually about a 30% decline in the past 50 years. There was someone in my field at Parks and Wildlife, I think it was John Heron, who had said, what we really ought to be doing is we need to be keeping common wildlife common, critters common, not let them become endangered. We don't want to decimate species when they're endangered. Then they're on the brink. That's a problem. So we want to keep them common. So we've all seen painted bunnies, but they've declined significantly. That's our kind of example of something that we really should be watching out for. Another one, anybody have, lesser goldfinches, got them at my thistle feeder right now.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been coming great. That is also a terrible trend line. I will go ahead and jump ahead and anticipate your question. What are the red lines? The red lines are the 95% confidence intervals. So the upper, low, and lower, if you're a statistician, upper and lower confidence intervals. So you're 95% sure that that population trend is somewhere between those two lines. The midpoint is the black line. That line is not good. Doesn't matter if you use the upper, the lower, or the middle line. And that's about a 50% decline in lesser goldfinches. So we have birds that we are very familiar with that need our help. So that's troubling. But another great opportunity. We asked about wildlife tax valuation. Here is actually the trend. It started in '96, but this is from Texas Land Trends .org. It's through the Texas A&M Natural Resource Institute, and you can see that the trend has been just really significant. And so we've got in 2017, actually the 2022 data is still being processed. I actually talked to them just about 2 weeks ago. They said, sorry, it's still not available. I remember in 2017, the same issue. It takes them a long time. Basically, this is from all the appraisal districts across the state, and they put it together. But you can see we've got 5 million acres. It's probably around 8 million now. It's just my guess about what it is. That's a tremendous, and Texas is a privately owned, private landowner state. 95, 96% of the state is privately owned. What private landowners do is going to be what, benefits these species. So this is really a very optimistic thing that number is increasing and people are switching from a traditional ag to managing specifically for wildlife. So that's a great opportunity there. So what are the steps to land stewardship? So one of the things is identify the habitats you're dealing with, the different types, and the quality. So even if you're in a backyard, it's kind of like thinking about what kind of habitat that is. What we recommend is selecting only 2 or 3 species to identify for each habitat type and focus on those and understand what those species need. Now, those 2 or 3 species should be enough different that you you don't want to just pick seed eaters. You want to pick an insect eater and a seed eater, or you don't want to just pick a Buick's wren and a Carolina wren. You want to pick Carolina wren or a Buick's wren, which is a priority species, and a summer tanager. So you got a high canopy insect-eating bird, and you got something that's using lower level. So that helps you by monitoring those populations to be able to know whether you're improving the habitat in a very diverse way. The other thing is, from that is that you decide the stewardship practices you're going to do to try to improve the habitat for those species. Look, they're fancy. And so actually, this is Jan. Jan says that, really you should be prepared to be your own best advisor. And she goes, look and listen, continue to ask questions, keep learning. You're obviously here tonight. Keep learning, find trusted advisors. Jan will say that I was one of those trusted advisors that she found at one point, and make science-based decisions, okay? one of the things is a lot of the stewardship issues that are related to, our book is organized by habitat types. And so through the first 6 chapters, it is organized by habitat types. But the last 3 chapters are on these really specific problems. One is, predators and other dangerous animals, like cats and feral hogs, cowbirds, deer. Deer are a huge issue all across the state of Texas. And so we really need to get a handle on that, understand that. And then we also have a chapter on cedar and other brush management. And that's actually one of the chapters that we had made some significant change to. We expanded that chapter in this new edition, as well as we actually expanded pretty significantly the introduction, which has a lot of information. This is a reference book. This is not a bird book. This is not a field guide, an ID book, or a plant ID book. This is a reference guide for land management with birds as a focus. And most reference books, you might not sit down and read the introduction. We encourage you to sit down and read the introduction.
Yes.
There's a ton of great information in the introduction that will help you in being a much better land steward and utilizing the book more effectively. Some of those, so that section on dangerous animals, one that you'll see, I'll mention again, is red imported fire ants, or RIFA. We'll use the acronym RIFA, but red imported fire ants. Cats, we know that cats are a significant predator on birds, and feral hogs, which in Texas, they're an exotic, right? They came over with Spanish explorers, so they've had a chance for the past 300 years to get a foothold. Actually, it's estimated there is many feral hogs in Texas as there are white-tailed deer. 3.5 million. And then brown-headed cows, special situation, a native bird that is a parasitic, a obligate brood parasite is the way to put it. And its impact on birds has been enhanced significantly by what we've done as European settlers. So I'm not going to go into that right now. If y'all have questions later, I'd be happy to answer anything about that. We were talking about master naturalists. This is actually from one of the master naturalists here in the Alamo area chapter, actually Joey Fisher-Hine. She's a wonderful artist as well, and she did this painting on called Silent Spring, 4 billion and 1 and counting. So the estimates on the number of birds that cats kill in a year is somewhere between 2.5 and 4 billion and 1. So, or 4 billion. And so she's just pointing that out, that's really something that needs to be addressed. It's really actually a beautiful work of art. You can probably recognize a ton of the feathers that are there. It's really nice. And the painted bunny right there. So one of the things is to think about healthy habitat. Jan mentioned that. We're just going to give you an example. We're going to talk a little bit about healthy habitat and get you thinking about looking at habitat. My wife says she used to drive around in perfect bliss. And now, after being married to me for 8 years, everything, especially when she's riding around with me, because I'm sitting there going, oh, look at that. Oh, God. So she says, oh, you've just ruined it for me. So this is an example of healthy live oak habitat. Actually, and if you think of backyards around San Antonio, live oak savanna, it's really what you got in your yards. If you think about and look at the chapter on live oak savanna, that should give you some ideas about what it should look like and how do you manage it. So kind of think about your backyard as a live oak savanna. But a live oak savanna should be grasses and trees and shrubs. And if you look at that photo, there are actually like a dozen different shrub species in that. There's redbud in there, there's elbow bush, there is grapevine in there. So it really should look like that. Here is unhealthy habitat. This is actually, one of the things is you can see there's no understory, right? And that's significant to certain species. We're talking about Buick's wrens. If you're a Buick's wren, I mean, where's the habitat there, right? If you're a birder and you're looking for Buick's wrens, you're going to walk past this, you're going to go, okay, where's the better habitat? But if you got down on your knee, squatted down, you could look from one side of this property to the other side of this property. There's no understory. That's a significant problem. And when we talked about the painted bunting, this is really an issue for the painted bunting. You can see, and where this is actually information that comes from our book. This is just some summarized information. But you'll see that one of the things is 5 acres per nesting pair. So if you have a piece of property, you can start thinking about that. Helps you determine, well, you're not, if you've got 10 acres, you're not going to get 4 pairs of painted buntings on it. You just need to be realistic about that. They're going to be territorial, and they're going to, that's what that's based on. And so, but one of the other things is you'll see down here on what to do for this bird, and it's control over population of deer. And what deer can do is they put that browse line from 3 to 5 feet. Where do they nest? 3 to 5 feet off the ground. That's why it's so important, right? There's other information there. And again, as we already know, it's a priority bird. It's declined significantly. This is just an example. It's a different species. Actually, it's a hermit thrush. And but you can see there's a lot more information in what we call our bird summaries that's in the book. And that's where that information on the painted bunting came from, as well as this information for the lesser goldfinch. And actually, the lesser goldfinch is our good example. The painted bunting is a great example for the live oak savanna, where the lesser goldfinch is a good example of a grassland bird. Although we've got them in savanna type settings, but they are definitely a grassland type bird. Plant diversity, really important to the species. And so when you think of grassland, what's healthy grasslands, and I'm going to show a couple pictures of that. What's healthy grassland, it should have a diversity of not just grasses, but forbs, broadleaf, flowering plants. Those are really important as well. If you do grazing, then light to moderate grazing is really important. So using a rotational system can really help maintain the quality of the habitat for the species. So this is, here's our healthy grassland habitat. And you can actually see in this photo that you can see that there are different layers. Actually, this is probably mainly King Ranch Bluestem back here. But this is not, and nor is this. That little bit of lighter color is probably King Ranch. But, and you can, actually, there's some forbs here. So that you can see different colors. That's different species of grasses that are in there. And so that's what you want. You want to have not just grasses, but you want to have forbs as well, and a variety of each. This is an unhealthy grassland. Speaking of King Ranch Bluestem, this is almost solid King Ranch Bluestem, which is an exotic from the Mediterranean. It just got the name King Ranch because guess where it was first brought in? Ranch. So keep in mind that a healthy grassland is not going to is going to have a mixture of both native grasses as well as forbs. Backyards. And what we're going to talk about now, I want you to kind of take a look at that backyard habitat there. before I'm going to pull up a picture and it's going to cover up actually the people in that, but is that that backyard habitat. I mean, who does not have black-crested titmice, right? But it's a priority bird. Why would it be a priority bird? Everybody has black-crested titmice. Well, one of the reasons is the population is wholly almost just within the hill country. Actually, within central Texas, the whole population of black-crested titmice are there. So what we do impacts this species, okay? Especially as people that live in central Texas. So you can see that, you know, the needs for it, I mean, seeds and many insects. So many of the birds that we think about, even as eating seeds, I mean, obviously we see titmice all the time at feeder, but they eat lots of insects. And especially when they're raising young, they eat lots of insects and feed those young tons of insects. Even birds like a cardinal, northern cardinal, that is a species that you think of. Boy, that bird is really adapted to eating seeds. And it'll crack those seeds very efficiently. It really cracked my finger when I was a kid, when they grabbed a hold of me. But they feed their young insects, and it's because it's just a very high protein food source. So y'all had some programming on birds and talking about birds and bugs, and they are just you know, so critical together to be able to have healthy insect populations and healthy healthy bird populations. You'll see that because it's such a backyard species, keeping feeders clean is really important, as well as keeping cats indoors. And if you do nothing else, if you love cats and have cats, is spay and neuter your pets. We don't need more cats. So backyard habitat. Actually, I sort of joke. It's like, what does backyard habitat look like in San Antonio? St. Augustine grass and live oak trees. That's it, right? It doesn't have to be that way. And as the previous picture showed of a backyard, you can do a lot. And actually thinking about the edges of the yard, you can still have a fairly formal yard, or you can have one that's wilder, more like this. And that's a picture of good, healthy backyard habitat. That is not. That's kind of my example of like saying turf grass and live oaks, and that's it. That's just the diversity is extremely low for that plant community, for that bird habitat. So basically, so as I said, one of the things you want to do is you want to identify the habitat types that you have. You know, make a list and determine the habitat health. Select 2 to 3 species to manage for each habitat type, and then determine the stewardship practices that you're going to use. And that is the information that we have in those not only in the chapter that associates with that habitat type, but also for the bird species in that those bird summaries at the end of the chapter. So basically, we did an overview of land stewardship. We talked about birds as indicators for success. We talked about examples of habitats and bird requirements. Now, I probably only have time to do one, but if there are any questions right now.
Very early on, you had the number of acres under wildlife management in Texas. I don't know what are the requirements or the descriptors of wildlife management.
Sure. So wildlife tax valuation. So if someone currently it has an ag valuation, it's basically just a different version of ag. And so from a property tax appraisal standpoint, if you have your property in ag, it's appraised at a rate that is related to the agricultural potential of that piece of property. So the taxes are, other than your home and the immediate buildings around it, are taxed at a much lower rate from an appraisal standpoint, if you're in ag. And so ag would mean something like you've got cattle out there. That's the most common thing. In this part, in the eastern part of the state, they do timber as well. So that's an agricultural operation there. But in the 90s, they decided, actually, we voted on it. More than two-thirds of the Texans voted for, all those constitutional amendments. Well, we voted on a constitutional amendment that made wildlife tax valuation we amended the Constitution to add it. And so that's available for landowners that currently have ag that can switch and use this other version of ag, and you focus on wildlife. Does that help?
So there are criteria in order to focus on wildlife? These
Yes.
owners have got to
Yes,
get.
there's two things. One is there's a criteria and what you have to have had as far as ag. So you have to have had it for over 5 years. You also have to, many counties have a minimum number of acres. Oftentimes in the central part of the state, it's around 20. And then you can go to wildlife. And for wildlife, you have to be active in the type of management that you do. Many of the things that we were talking about are practices that would qualify under a wildlife tax valuation.
Thank you.
You bet.
Those curves you showed, most of the drop was from 1970 to 2000. From 2000 on, some of them leveled out. So it seems like if you were doing curve fitting, you wouldn't fit a straight line on that. You would try to break those into different components, instead of that, from a scientific point of view, I would think that you would do that because you don't have a continuous trend there.
Yeah, right. So will the bottom fall out of the lesser goldfinch population? It seems to have kind of leveled out at 50% of what it was from the 70s. But Jerry, I'll challenge you on that. If you just showed the past 10 or 20 years, it would look like the population hadn't dropped much at all. And it really wouldn't show the picture that the population had significantly dropped since the 70s. And it may be that it kind of plateaued out more recently, but it would give you an inaccurate picture to only show the last 10 or 20 years.
Well, anyhow, we can debate that. We can debate that.
So, anything else, Linda?
I'm in the process of making a brush pile, which either can go to green recycling or remain there, except I don't have a good recipe for a brush pile. So all I'm doing is just chunking the stuff that I pruned in a pile back in the back under an oak tree. Is there a good recipe for a brush pile? Do I need a brush pile?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. One is if you've got larger material, it's better to make a TP style brush pile. And that's by taking the large parts and then crossing them up at the top. What that does is it has an open area underneath. If it all sits flat, it makes great snake and lizard habitat.
That's what I thought.
And Buick's Wrens really would like it as well. And roadrunners love it.
Chapter on that, a chapter on brush pile.
Yes. You can use things under it to kind of elevate it, and that would, make it less like skunk habitat. So
I'll crawl under there tomorrow and see what I can.
With that, we're gonna kind of quickly go through one of those, and I'm gonna let y'all select which topic we take.
Lots of surveys to do.
Yeah.
I got
Is there really an answer to deer management?
That's a good question. No, it's much like brush management. You're gonna be after it for a long time. Cedar doesn't go away. You keep going, you're gonna keep cutting new cedars as they come along. You know, you know, with deer management, even if you go, I got my deer where I want them, you're gonna have to continue to do something, harvest that population to keep it at that level.
Does anybody really have the deer at the level that they want them at, though?
Some people do. And there are pockets of why we don't know that deer populations have plummeted dramatically in the hill country.
Yeah. We have a low population.
Maybe okay, but it's it's high pass. And it's been that way for a long time.
It's right, exactly. Never know why.
Yeah, and so y'all want to pick one of these? Grasslands. Grasslands.
Grassland?
All right, let's see if I can.
Grassland?
Let's see. Can someone help me if they'll go over with a mouse and click that? Okay, grassland stewardship tools. So one of them is map my property. I admit, I'm a GIS geek. Okay, and so I love map my property. I'm going to show you that one just real quick. And it has information you can find the ecological site description from the soil survey, which is super valuable information. Okay, and then web soil surveys. We're going to actually do more than that. This is Map My Property. It's done by Texas Forest Service. It's actually a way to be able to create a plan to deal with wildfires. Imagine that with 500,000 acres just being burned up in the panhandle. So so they know where, so you can help share somebody in the spur of the moment, which it sounds like they were really dealing with that up there. That you can share where there's roads or where there's water on your property and stuff like that. That's the idea behind it, but it's a great wildlife management tool. So one of the cool things about it is you go, I hate to sort of look at a map and try to figure out my property, it's that tree and it goes, the fence is kind of right here. No, they have the appraisal district data on there. So you can pick out your piece of property and mark it out. You will have to draw it out. And one of the things about this is it's a GIS program. It's very quirky. They will crash. So save. So one of the things, I drew a little polygon here for a piece of property, imaginary piece of property. It's actually on the Cibolo Nature Center, but it's not the whole nature center. And you can go down to themes and you can pick out soils and you can clip that soil theme and you can tell it to give you a full report. And when you get that full report, it looks like this below. And one of the things you'll see ecological class, and there's a description there. It's a loamy bottomland. Okay, can you help me go to the PDF, please? So he's going to pull up the PDF, the ecological site description for that. It's on the desktop, remember? Nope, there it is. And so if you'll scroll down, go ahead. Scroll down. Back up. If it's highlighted, it's important. Ecological dynamics. It's really cool information. It tells you about the soil and it says what were the ecological forces that created that site in the pre-European settlement. So it'll talk about buffalo and prescribed burning, and it'll give you, or actually in wildfires and how that related to it, and what did the vegetative community look like. This is where you figure out the health, right? This helps you look at your piece of property, the soil type. You look at this and you look at that and you go, I don't have enough little blue stem. And actually you go, well, how much little blue stem? Scroll down a little bit. Oh, there you go. So here's this. So additional tables, you go down and it's plant community 1.1. 1.1 is basically the pre-European settlement. So if you go down, just scroll just a little bit. Here's a plant list. Somebody goes to me and comes to me as a wildlife consultant and says, I want to do a grassland restoration. What are the plants I should plant on it? This is where I go. I'm just telling you what I do. I go to the soil survey and I look at this and I go, here is your, here's an example. No, it's a little more difficult than that. Oh, yeah, you want to pay for me, Tom? Come on. And so, but this is the kind of information people are always trying to figure out. And it also, not only that, but it gives you the information, like it tells you what it should be. It's in pounds per acre, but you can figure out what the dominant plants are. So it's supposed to mainly be little blue stem, and you go out there and you got 5 little blue stem plants, right? The quality of your habitat is low. Okay, let's go back to the presentation.
Rufus, okay, in the chat, people are saying, can't see scrolling on Zoom, we're only seeing from the screen. And then you're asking what the source for that was.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to reply to the chat, yes, or I will, I guess you can hear me, is that's information, and you can either get it through through this document on the Map My Property, or the next.
We can't see this. They can't see these screens.
Now they can, now they
Yeah, they can see this one. Yeah, they're not seeing the other one, I guess. There we go. Web Soil Survey is another one that you can go to and get that same information. So it's the ecological site description for the particular soil that's on your property. And when you go to that ecological site description, I abbreviated that one. They're like 20 or 30 pages long. So I just made one that was only about 5 pages just to get the stuff I wanted to show y'all. But that's where the source, that's where it comes from. So a healthy grassland, remember, it's got grasses and forbs. What do you do? What are the techniques that you use if you don't, to try to improve something that a grassland that's degraded? One is you can replant. If you are starting from square one, you can replant. One of the things, and you can also mow if you are terrified of fire, and you should be, but fire is a really important land management tool. But you can mow or mow and bale, and I'll tell you that that's only marginally better than doing nothing at all. Okay, but it is better than doing nothing. So don't just take all the cows off and go, let nature take its course, because you'll end up with no forbs. Okay, we've actually experienced some of that related to a property that we do a bird survey on. Prescribed burning, I already mentioned it. It's really important in recycling nutrients and providing space for forbs to germinate and grow. And prescribed grazing does a lot of the same things. So grass drill. So Parks and Wildlife in the Hill Country now has a grass drill. You can talk to your local biologist, and if you have a grassland that you want to replant, you can work with Parks and Wildlife, and they will help you do that. You can just borrow the equipment, and that's the grass drill. You have to provide the tractor.
Do you want to mention this?
Yeah. So, and when in buying your seed, the Native American seed is a good example of a really great source for doing that. But so they are available. So that's really great for doing grassland restoration when you don't have, when the quality is so degraded, or you're starting from zero. You have bare ground. So mowing, someone's got bare ground. And so mowing, the problem with mowing is that it usually doesn't control brush. It also throws a ton of litter on the ground. It just creates a thick mulch. It's like mulching your garden. And what does that do? It prevents the weeds from coming up. That's why you do it, right? Well, that's what happens here, so you don't get much coming up. Mow and bale baling helps some, but it's, you know, and you're taking off a lot of litter, right, in the form of big bales, but it doesn't, and you can use them for restoration, which is what we did at the Civil and Nature Center. We use those bales and help control some erosion areas or treat some erosion areas, but it still leaves tons of litter on the ground. So it's only marginally better. One thing to do is if you are interested in trying to manage a part of your property in grassland and you want to have another area that's managed a little bit more as a wildflower meadow, I suggest what I call the textile approach. And the textile approach means that you're basically promoting wildflowers at the expense of perennial grasses. And basically, here's what TxDOT does. They don't mow until, you know, around July, the 4th of July. You'll see that they start mowing earlier than that because they hire contractors. And they do 2 or 4 times before frost. And sometimes you see them mowing in December and it's like, it's all dead. It's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna grow anymore. But what it does is it makes the wildflowers grow on our roadsides, right? So, but I would not do more than 1/3 of an area in this approach because you need that grasses, LeConte sparrows, grasshopper sparrows, important wintering species and breeding species that breed in grasslands. They need that cover, that grass cover that you lose when you do this approach. So here's your bare ground. I mean, here's your built up litter and everything. But one of the ways to deal with that is prescribed burning. And here's what it looks like, right? And I can see it better on that, but you can see there's spaces between there. The grass is still there. Grasses are adapted. Our warm season grasses are adapted to periodic fires. And as well as are the forbs. So you can see just a ton more of plant life coming up in this slide than in the previous slide. So here's just an example of how it changes it. A graph is probably not this type of graph, a line graph is not the best way to show this. That's my fault. But because it really, at the point of the burn, it all of a sudden jumps from almost no bare ground to, 35% bare ground. And that bare ground is where wildflowers are going to be able to germinate. And you'll see that the forbs jump up after the burn, and the grasses do decline, but they recover. So that's important. And you'll notice you go out about 3 to 5 years, and all of a sudden it starts reverting back to what it was before. And that's why you need to do a cycle of burning is about a 3 to 5 year cycle, at least in this area. It's different in different parts of the state. Prescribed grazing, actually, this is a good example of what not to do. Don't get some longhorns and just leave them out there. You can see that there's really no grass cover and there's only Indian blankets. And the Indian blankets are beautiful, but they are, it's basically a response to being overgrazed. So one of the things to do with prescribed grazing is to do a deferred or rotational system. And there are 2 pasture, 1 herds, there's 4 pastures, 1 herd, and that's probably more like, and there's actually even higher, well, I don't have it listed, but there's even higher that are called short duration grazing. We have multiple pastures, 10 to 20 pastures, 1 herd, and you're moving them around. And it's more like a migratory herd. Think of it like what was the animals that were here that made that plant community that plant community? It was buffalo. They came, large numbers, grazed heavily, then moved on and may not be back to that area for months. So those systems work better. If you don't have the animals, think about working with your neighbor and doing a co-op. There are wildlife tax valuation folks that have, and if you think of each one as a pasture, if there was one, group of cattle that could rotate through them, I've been trying to promote this for a long time. And I've yet to know of anybody that's done that. The other is if you have wildlife tax valuation and your neighbor has cattle, you can at least move, you can come in and you can graze it for like 3 weeks and then you get them off. The really important thing is do it at different times of the year. So here's a rotational system, a 1 herd, 4 pasture, and what you end up with is one of the pastures in rest. So you can see now what it'll do is in January and February, that one that's rested is going to be grazed, and then so on and so forth. So you rotated it. So each pasture is not grazed at the same time every year. If you do it at the same time every year, it's going to go to a particular type of plant community. So having that rotation is critical. Some of the birds that utilize these grassland communities, lark sparrows, especially on short type grass stuff, field sparrows, LeConte sparrows is a winter grassland bird, a real priority species, and we have them in the hill country, just don't see them that much. So with that, I'm going to hit return with the, thank you. So we talked about grassland, we don't have time to do another one. I appreciate y'all having us here. It's, I don't know if we've had any other announcements. I do like to dedicate my presentations to my brother Ben, who is the one holding the fish, who died several years ago of ALS. Remember the ice bucket challenge? ALS is a horrible disease, also called Lou Gehrig's disease, horrible disease. And to my son, Wrede, who I dedicated, Jan and I both dedicated to our kids. I dedicated Ruth's memory. Actually, all the sales, all of my royalties, all the money, when we sell books and things like that, events like this, all go to a fund for conservation around in a watershed up in Arkansas that Ruth and I both grew up. I grew up around it, and I took him there, and it basically gave us our passion for the outdoors. So he had just graduated with his wildlife degree when he was killed. So, so I always dedicate my presentations to them. So with that, I don't know if you'll have other.
I just want to say that we do a landowner survey down in Wilson County, 200 acres, and he's doing a lot of what you're talking about. That poor 1 herd, he has a neighbor that brings the cattle in and he moves them. So you might want to talk to him. Think you can find he's in the prairie group though. He's got help with the native prairies people.
So what I think about too is that people that will have these 20-acre blocks in the hill country, and they're all doing wildlife tax valuation, but none of them have cattle, and none of them are doing prescribed burning. They're all doing wildlife. But if they could work with a neighbor, and then even though each patcher is a different landowner, it could just be, so co-op crazy. So I think that's probably really a neat idea that I'd like to see people utilize. Grazing and fire, they are really important tools. It's a shame if people throw those out and say, I won't use those as a tool. If you don't, it makes it a real challenge to do a lot of really good management. And think about it. I mean, that's what pre-European settlement, bison and regular fires. Most of them set by Native Americans, but a lot of wildfires as well. There's a great account. Oh gosh, now I'm going to forget who it was. It's one of the big native plant people. It wasn't Lindheimer. It was one of the other ones. But he does an account of going from New Braunfels up to through Cibolo or through Bernie, across the Cibolo, up to Fredericksburg, onto Plano, and basically they saw fire and were in burnt ground the entire time. I mean, think about all that country that used to burn. I mean, it's just staggering. Now, today we have to do prescribed burning. Parks and Wildlife can help you with that. Nature Conservancy has burn crews and help you do prescribed burns. We're not talking wildfires, we're talking prescribed burns.
Any questions? We have a few minutes for questions.
I'm just curious, and I know it hasn't come to fruition at all in Texas yet, I don't believe, but in Wyoming, some of the buffalo herds have come back, and has it helped return some of that to the grassland and to and some of the bird populations and stuff back to what it used to be?
That's a great question. So, okay, I'll repeat the question. So it was about that other parts of the country, like Wyoming, Montana, they've got some large tracts of land that have buffalo on them now. And has that, the utilization of buffalo, helped restore those grasslands and recover some of those species that we're talking, or at least maintain them, sustain those species? I haven't seen specific information on them, on bird populations related to bison as in a management situation. Probably the best example is at Yellowstone, right? And, you know, a huge part in Yellowstone was bringing back the wolves, which biologists at the time, we didn't get. We didn't realize that changing behavior, not just eating them, but changing their behavior would change the ecology. So elk would sit and just hang out on the river banks in the riparian area, the streamside habitat, and just eat all the willows till there was nothing left. And so then there was nothing for the beaver to use. And so once they brought back wolves, it was dangerous to stay in the streams and around the willows. And so, yeah, and then bison, and then they also had the let it burn policy, right? And if you remember, it was 25 years ago or something like that, they had let it burn, and a huge chunk of Yellowstone burned. But now it's just created an amazing, in combination with the bison, they've increased. There are some bison herds that are in Texas. Caprock Canyon State Park, I think, is the one that has bison in it. And that's a pretty big, you know, piece of property with bison on it. Apparently, there's some Native Americans in South Texas that are Indian descendants that are able to get some of these excess bison that they have from places like Yellowstone and have started a herd in South Texas. So when I was in Western Kansas, I experienced bison firsthand. There was some bison up in that area as well that private landowners had. And it was truly amazing how bison behave as compared. Anybody watch the Ken Burns special on bison? They talk a little bit about how they are more adapted. They don't go, what happened in big snowstorms is that European cattle would just pile up, they'd head to a fence, they'd all pile up on the fence and then just get covered in snow and kill them all. Bison's just standing. And I've watched it in blizzards, just blowing snow. And they just stand there. And they also, and what do the cattle do in the heat of the summer? They pile into the riparian areas. Like, I need some shade. Bison, they just stand there in the heat. And just, I mean, they slow down a little bit, but they are not. And so their grazing is much more evenly distributed than by European livestock. I think, you know, I just haven't looked at it. There's probably some data starting to come on birds. And I will say, let me just finish one thing. I will say, bird research, wildlife research, other than game species, is way under resourced and valued.
Here, volunteer.
Yeah.
Any other questions
We have
from?
some comments / questions. Okay. Coco says there's a lot of public land and
Coco mentions about public land in
Montana.
Montana and Wyoming.
Private land here, not so much. Brucellosis from bison to cattle would keep ranchers from having them.
Yeah, so there is low fences, yeah, that keep people from having them around here. They are, I also have been experienced, I helped run, work up bison on a buffalo refuge that they had just south of Garden City, Kansas. I worked for about 5 years in western Kansas, displaced Texan. And so, it was that herd, it was interesting working with bison. Bison kind of they seem very docile until they run you over like a tank.
Yes.
And and they run through fences. And so it is true that you need to invest more in fences when you have them.
And then Kip put a link in here, Texas Tribal Buffalo Project. He says Texas Tribal Buffalo Project is not too far away for the benefit of landscapes and indigenous culture.
So Texas
Tribal Buffalo
Buffalo
Project.org.
Yeah, .org. So that's for you people in here. Those people online, they can see the chat, so they should know.
Yes, and anything that's in the chat, that there's a link, when we write it up for our Vimeo thing, we'll
Okay.
put it in there.